Donald Trump could become US president for the second time. Last time he didn't expect it himself. This time he has a plan. And it's not secret, but he talks openly about it. We worked through his election program and that of his party. We analyzed his interviews and several election speeches. And we dealt with the notorious Project 2025. Should Trump win on November 5th and do what he announces, the United States of America will fundamentally change. Donald Trump's 2016 election victory was a surprise. For observers, but also for himself. He went into the White House unprepared and without a concrete plan. Accordingly, he was not well prepared for the resistance that the checks and balances of US democracy provided for him. He wanted to build a wall at the border with Mexico, but failed because of a Democratic majority in the House of Representatives in financing. He wanted to abolish Obamacare, but even Republican senators opposed it. He wanted to use the military in his own country to get hold of the unrest after the assassination of George Floyd. But his own defense minister stood up. And he did not want to acknowledge his election defeat in 2020, but his own vice president had the result of the election confirmed by the Congress. And that, although a mob of skinny supporters, was violently pushed into the Capitol by Trump. In addition, he was engaged in 2 extradition proceedings and 4 court proceedings after his presidency. His concerns were repeatedly prevented by contradictions, courts, and democratic institutions. Or, as Trump would say, deep state. He claims corrupt officials, secret services, and the security apparatus had swindled against him and the country. And he speaks openly of defamation and revenge. But what exactly is he up to? January 20th, 2025, Washington, D.C. Donald Trump becomes the 47th President of the United States. The Republicans get the majority in both Congress chambers. On the same day, Trump and his team get to work. In one of his first administration actions, he signs the Decree Schedule F, an order with which he can replace or dismiss government officials as he likes. It is common for new presidents to exchange up to 4,000 political officials at the administration office, e.g. diplomats. Most of them, however, are employed and enjoy special protection. Experts in the authorities should not have to worry about their job every 4 years, because they do not fit the current president. On the other hand, this also means that they can, of course, boycott the leadership and thus the president a bit, by giving false information, by refusing to implement certain things, by letting certain initiatives lie in the administration. And Trump really can't stand that. And I think that's the point. Trump wants loyal soldiers in the administration who immediately implement one-to-one what he wants. Trump could fire up to 50,000 officials in the first few days and replace them with loyal supporters. Insiders have told the US magazine Axios that positions in the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the FBI could be in the spotlight. And as long as the military, but also secret services or the FBI take a neutral position here, it will be more difficult for Trump to implement something like that. But he could now start in the next few years to exchange central positions in this military, in the secret services, in order to make these organizations more under his control. And that could then become dangerous. Trump also has a look at the courts. He wants to hire 100 federal lawyers to investigate Marxist district state lawyers, as he says. District state lawyers are very powerful. They have brought 88% of the arrested to the US. Even when Trump was sentenced to silence in May, such a district state lawyer opened the trial and made the judgment. With the 100 federal lawyers, he could apply indirect pressure on the district lawyers so that they would decide more in line with him. The Supreme Court of the country has had a clear conservative majority since Trump's term in office. Trump himself has appointed 3 of 9 judges. Since then, the Supreme Court has often decided in his own way. Recently, the court decided that the US president is absolutely immune to official office actions. Trump could potentially break all possible laws as president and just get away with it, as long as it was just an official office action. There are already more extreme examples. Even the own lawyers of Trump have confirmed at an hearing of the Supreme Court that this could also be the case. And that would be the case if the president hires a SEALs team, i.e. from the Marines, to exclude a political opponent. That he could not be blamed for this, because he could present it as if it were for the protection of the government. But we're actually not there yet. Because what the Supreme Court sees exactly as an official office action is still unclear. One of the 3 liberal judges in court criticized that the president was standing above the law like a king with this decision. But not only that. Should Trump come to office, all the investigations that run against him because of election manipulation and restlessness, that he organized the storm on the Capitol, he could easily end that immediately. He could also use investigations against political opponents. What could be even more dangerous to him is civil protest. But here, too, he already has a plan. The key to this is a 200-year-old law that regulates the use of the US military in times of restlessness. The so-called Insurrection Act. The defeat of protests with the military is actually almost only known from dictatorships. In 2020, Trump wanted to defeat the protests and uprisings in the course of the assassination of George Floyd with the help of the National Guard, but was prevented by his military leadership. Trump regretted the public and explained that he would not back down in the future. There, again, the military plays a role, and they can of course also say, no, we don't want such initiatives. We are careful here. But just the fact that you deal with such conflict options, where the executive is in conflict with the military, would already show that democracy is really on the verge and no longer really works. Now you might think that Trump has tried a lot of it in his first presidency, but he just didn't make it. But there is a difference to back then. This time he is much better prepared. And he has some very powerful allies who have come up with a clever plan. The Project 2025 is a 920-page manifesto that contains detailed suggestions for the next Republican president. Behind it is the Heritage Foundation, an influential conservative think tank that is supported by over 100 organizations. According to CNN, 140 former Trump employees are involved in Project 2025, including 31 of the 38 authors. A core piece of the project is a plan for the first 180 days of Trump's presidency. The content is kept secret so that Trump's opponents cannot prepare for it. However, there are leaks. Russell Vought, one of the masterminds of the project and a Trump confidant. He was secretly filmed by journalists who turned out to be relatives of a conservative generous donor. He says that he is preparing hundreds of regulations with his organization. One pillar will be help in exchanging government officials. The project has selected and prepared tens of thousands of candidates. Trump would then just have to click through a database and get the right candidates on board. You can still apply on their website today to work with the next Trump administration. The most important thing will be that many so far independent authorities directly support Trump. Project 2025 follows the demands of the theory of uniform executive. The project wants the president to get the full power over the executive. Congress and courts are to be weakened. When the project became public, there was heavy criticism. As the criticism became louder and louder, Trump distanced himself. But this distance is not credible. He knows all these people. He has worked closely with these people. The gap between his program, the Republican election program, and this publication of Project 2025 is so big that you can clearly see that it comes from one political direction. The Heritage Foundation has officially announced to implement its political work on Project 2025. A few days earlier, Russell Vought said behind a closed door that they will continue to work on the plan for the first 180 days. He calls it Phase 2. According to him, they are preparing legislation and administrative restructuring. So Trump's radical agenda should be implemented as quickly and effectively as possible in the event of a victory. And there would be a lot to implement. This is Trump's central promise. Trump speaks of illegal immigrants being arrested and deported. According to estimates, around 11 million people live in the US without official permission. 80% of them have been living in the country for more than a decade, have families and friends. They would then have to leave everything behind. Trump has announced to close the border to Mexico completely on the first day. And he wants to build a wall. Still, This travel ban affects Muslim-based countries. At the same time, Trump wants schools to be reclaimed. Many Republicans have been criticizing for a long time that more and more progressive or woke content is flowing into the teaching plans through the Ministry of Education in Washington. That's why they want to abolish the Ministry of Education and leave education policy to the countries. That's exactly what Trump has announced. He speaks of transgender ideology or the critical race theory. Schools should no longer get money if they have these or other inappropriate content on the teaching plan. What is to be understood under inappropriate content remains completely open. Only teachers with patriotic values defined by him should be set up. What he means by that and how he wants to ensure that, he doesn't say. Trump wants to abolish the gender entry diverse on US passes. It should only be male and female again. He has also promised to spread financial support for hospitals that support gender equality treatment of young people. Doctors who have carried out such operations in the past should even be prosecuted for this. With his America First policy, Trump wants to strengthen the domestic industry and reduce trade deficit. He has announced that he wants to introduce at least 10% interest on all imported goods. On Chinese products, interest rates could be over 60%. According to experts, this would intensify the existing trade wars and would have negative consequences for the global economy. There are now also forecasts that the American economy would suffer massively, especially under the trade policy that he wants to implement. In a public letter, 16 Nobel Prize winners warned against Trump's proposals. The economists say that his plans would incite inflation and destabilize the US economy. Trump wants to strike climate protection measures against the previous government. Instead of green energy, he wants to use fossil fuels. Under Trump, the USA would reappear from the Paris Climate Agreement. Trump has repeatedly claimed that he could end the war in Ukraine in just one day. But could that really work? If he simply stops his support for Ukraine, then Zelensky would have to stay in negotiations with Putin, and that would mean that all land gains that Russia has made at the moment would remain. But we know, because he understands Putin, that he would end the conflict at the expense of Ukraine. In addition, there are proposals for Project 2025. Project 2025 demands to remove trans people from the military service. In addition, they want the existing protection against discrimination due to sexual orientation and gender identity to be abolished. This would enable queer people to be disadvantaged in access to health care on the housing market or in job search. In addition, access to abortion should be significantly more difficult. The distribution of abortion medications should be made illegal. According to estimates, more than half of the abortions in the USA are used for medication. In addition, the costs for the pill after that should no longer be taken over by the health insurance companies. How much Trump has implemented the Project 2025 demand, of which he supposedly knows nothing, is open. Democracies are fragile. History is full of stories of how democracies and democratic countries turned into dictatorships. 2 Harvard professors have examined in their book How Democracies Die, how something like this happens. They have designed a kind of checklist to recognize potential autocrats in time. First, an rejection of the rules of democracy. Second, political opponents who reject legitimacy. Third, the tolerance or encouragement of violence. Fourth, the willingness to circumvent the freedom of rivalries and media. Is there hope in the end that the checks and balances of the American political system are strong enough, or that his opponent will prevail in the election? What do you think if Trump wins? Do you want Trump or Kamala Harris to win? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. Well folks, and with that, we end our video today. Thank you all for watching to the end. I hope you enjoyed our content. If you liked this video, we would be happy if you could like it and share the video on your social networks and subscribe to the channel. We have always appreciated your support. Now let's get ready for the next video here on our Wikipedia Plus channel. We'll be back soon. A big hug, and until then, bye.